Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on my Instagram. Unfortunately, I have a lot of anxiety and I'm a very, very shy person. So it's always been hard for me to find friends and even harder to date men. I'm 37 and I've only ever been on one date. I come from a Latin family and this is unforgivable to them. Since I turned 20, my family has always asked me every single day of my life when I'm gonna find a man. As you can imagine, this adds even more to my anxiety because I just feel extremely pressured. Remember that one date I went on? Well, that was actually set up through my parents. I was 25 years old and my mom started getting personal training. Her personal trainer is the one she set up the date with. And this guy was a nightmare. He was rude to the waiters of the restaurant we went to, and immediately after that I just left. I didn't even give him a second chance. As you can imagine, my parents were furious. My mom actually told me that she wanted me to marry this guy, and I was like, have you met him? I've always been completely misunderstood. Fast forward to me being 37. I landed my dream job in New York City and I moved away from home. I was happy being independent and moving away from my parents. I even lost my virginity and I was happy about it. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my father bribed my boyfriend to not break up with me. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. Finally lost my virginity at 37 years old. I was living by myself in New York City and I had finally moved away from my toxic parents. But my parents would call me every single day. And guess what they would ask? Did you finally meet someone at work? Apparently, I was about to meet somebody at work that I would marry. So this is how I met the guy I lost my virginity to. At work. I guess my parents were right. I work in fashion and marketing and every day I went to work I had to dress up really well. And it was fun. Again, for the first time in my life I was coming out of my shell. One of the editors at my job started noticing me. He invited me out to coffee and told me he wanted to show me the ropes. This was the first time that I found myself really attracted to a man. As you can imagine, I was so down. Ended up going to a bar and having wine together. After that, everything is a blur. I know that I kissed him and he kissed me back. That's when he asked me to go on a second date. And on the second date, we did it. I ended up losing my virginity and I called my parents and told them. This actually made them very happy. But now they said I had to marry the guy. But guess what? This guy wanted to be my boyfriend. And we started dating. But then I found something out. Part 3 is up.
My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. How do I get him to stop? Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 3 years. We actually got separated at the beginning of this year, and it was actually good for the both of us. My husband's always been a little bit, macho is the way I want to put it. He sometimes has a habit of humiliating me in front of his friends. I actually have a job that pays more than his, and this has always been a problem for him because he feels like he should be the breadwinner. So he basically makes jokes about how I'm the guy in the relationship. Our friends and family think it's totally inappropriate, but I think it's kind of funny. But when my friends explained it to me, it is kind of bad, I guess. I own 2 e-commerce businesses that I run from our house, so I'm essentially home all day. Recently we decided that we wanted to have kids, so we started trying. Unfortunately, my husband comes from a family where they believe the women should be doing all the cooking and the cleaning. So my husband expects for me to do all of those things. And if I don't, he tells me that I'm a bad wife. He also likes to control how I dress and he doesn't like me drinking. A few weeks ago we went to a friend's party and I got a little drunk. And on the way home I decided to make a confession that I used to be a stripper. Part 2 is up. My husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, I said it on Instagram. And that's when I confessed that I used to be a stripper. Right then and there, he pulls the car over to the side of the road. Then he actually started interrogating me. He asked me when I started, how long I did it for, where I stripped, what I wore, what the worst thing I had ever done was. He was trying to get all the tea. Immediately, I regretted it. I honestly didn't think that it was going to be a big deal. I mean, we have been married for 3 years now, so I thought that he would be more accepting of it. But that's when I remembered he comes from a family where they think that women shouldn't even have rights. I tried to take it back as a joke and he said that's not going to work. He proceeded to ask me questions for 2 hours on the side of the road. It was already 3 in the morning. By the end of it, I was so exhausted I started to cry and begged him to take me home. Then he said that he was afraid of even going to bed with me because I might give him an STD. That's when he told me that I probably took money for SEX. I had succeeded into digging myself into the deepest hole ever. I begged him to forget and he wouldn't. That's when he pulled out his phone and started texting his brothers. He told them everything. When we got home, he made me sleep on the couch. Part 3 is up. Husband won't stop slut-shaming me because I told him that I used to strip. Disclaimer, is not my story time, instead of me on Instagram. He actually made me sleep on the couch for a full week. And he basically gave me the cold shoulder every single day. He wouldn't even look at me when I talked to him. He would do was ask me for food. Sometimes he'll just come up to me and be like, what are you doing, slut? His brothers told him that I was probably doing the dirty with all of these guys at the strip club. And that he shouldn't believe a word that I say. A few nights ago, he sat me down and started interrogating me again. He told me that he wanted me to tell him the truth. And for me to just confess that I had done it with all of my clients at the strip club. He's actually even threatening to go to the strip club where I used to work to ask questions about me. Mind you, the strip club is like 10 hours away from where we live. He even checked my phone and my laptop. He says that he's scared that I might still be in contact with my clients from the strip club, and that he doesn't know what I'm capable of anymore. I've been begging him for forgiveness every single day, but I kind of want to tell him to F off now. Can't take him calling me names anymore. Luckily, my parents fully support me and want me to move in with them. The only thing that I'm afraid of is that if we do get a divorce, he's gonna try to take all of my money. I have way more money than he does in the bank, and he knows it. I've been totally honest about how much money I earn turn. Big mistake. What should I do?
Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Part 2. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. It's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I finally told my dad and he told my uncle to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed and told my dad that he was overreacting, and that all he said to me was that I was a pretty girl. What a liar. In part 1 and 2, I told you guys that it was getting worse, but here's where it actually gets even worse. Like I said, I have a really big family, so my cousins are growing up too. One of them just turned 13 and my uncle cannot stop staring at her. She's maturing a lot quicker than most 13-year-olds. He's already staring at her. So here's what I did. At the next family event, I sat right next to him. Every time he would stare at one of my cousins or try to make a comment at me, I called him out for it in front of everybody. I even recorded the things that he said. The fact that I even have to do this at a family event makes me sick. Instead of enjoying my time with my family, I have to sit next to my creepy uncle policing him. Anyway, it's totally worth it though. I'm making sure that my cousins don't feel uncomfortable. After I had enough recordings of him saying nasty things, at the next family event, I showed it to my grandma. I basically played it for the entire family. My grandma told him that he couldn't come to any more events if he was going to behave that way. And of course, he apologized to everyone right away. But not to me, he apologized to my dad. After his half-ass apology, he was let back into family events. I don't think that's enough punishment. Give me some ideas because I think I deserve justice. Creepy uncle. Story time about how my asshole boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months. We're both pretty young. I'm 19 and he's 22. I could say that he's just young and he doesn't know how to treat a woman yet, but he's pretty immature in everything else. Now you might wonder why I'm with him. It's because I love him. I met him when I was 15 in high school and I've been in love with him ever since. He always used to tell me that I was too young for him, but finally when I turned 18, he started paying attention to me. I begged him to go on a date with me and he finally said yes. At first, everything was so amazing. He was fun, charismatic, and super affectionate. When he finally asked me to be his girlfriend, I was so happy. But then slowly he started criticizing everything I wear. He doesn't like when I wear hoodies or sweaters, leggings or pants, skirts that are too short, skirts that are too loose, or crop tops. First he would politely say things, but now he's just straight up mean about it. He told me when I'm around him I can wear skimpy clothes, but when we go out he wants me to wear stuff that's loose. So I literally changed everything I wore. I dressed only for him and I started hating myself. Part 2 of how my boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I completely changed the way I dressed just for him. He would always find something to criticize, even down to the jewelry or hair accessories or makeup that I wore. It got to the point where if I went shopping, I would send him pictures of the stuff that I wanted to buy for him to approve. Even my nails. Anytime I went to the nail salon, I would have to send him pictures of the nail polish or any designs I wanted to do. And don't think that he's paying for stuff. No, he's not. I finally opened up to my mom and told her everything. She told my dad and they both got really upset. My dad even called my boyfriend and told him to come over. My parents told him to stop being so controlling, otherwise the relationship would be over. Of course, my boyfriend pretended to be on his best behavior, apologized and said that he wouldn't do it anymore. But when we left my parents' house, he told me I was a snitch. Then he made me promise to never tell my parents anything about our relationship again. And I know I should just break up with him, but I do love him. I've been in love with him for years, and now that I'm with him, I don't want to lose him. But I know that I've put him up on a pedestal. It's been a few weeks since my parents intervened, but my boyfriend hasn't changed a thing. I decided to buy myself a designer purse that I've been wanting for years. As soon as he saw me with the purse, he said that my privilege was showing and that I needed to go return it as soon as possible because it was embarrassing. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my boyfriend criticizes everything I wear. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. After he told me to return the designer purse, I said no. He then explained to me why I should be embarrassed to wear it. He said people that buy designer stuff are only trying to flaunt their wealth, and that people who do that are just trying to cover up their shortcomings. So basically, I'm trying to hide the fact that I'm not good at other things, or that I don't have good qualities. I couldn't believe what he was saying to me. For the first time ever, I defended myself and I told him he needed to leave me alone. And no, I didn't return the purse, and I'm not trying to flaunt my wealth either. So here's what I did. I started returning all the clothes that I bought just to wear for him and the ones he wants me to wear in front of other people. When he saw me again, he told me that I looked terrible. He said no one would take me seriously in my outfit with my designer purse. So I drove him back to his house because no, he doesn't have a car, and I've been ignoring his calls and messages for 4 days. My plan is to start treating him the way he treated me. I'm going to control and criticize everything he wears and see how he likes it. I think this is going to make things better. I don't want to break up with him because I do love him. What do you guys think? Storytime about how my boyfriend has a secret child with another woman. We've been together for 5 years, and I never knew that he had a child. His son is now 7 years old. A little backstory. When my boyfriend and I started dating, everything was great. He was the perfect boyfriend. He would drop anything to help me. He paid for everything, was super considerate, fun, and loving. But everything started to change last year when we moved in together. He told me that his job was starting to give him night shifts. Essentially, we never saw each other during the day or spent any time together. He also started telling me that he was too tired to go out on dates. I'm a paralegal and my office is really close to our apartment. So during my lunch break, I would go home to eat. One time that I came home, I caught him talking on the phone in the bathroom. I could only hear that he was whispering and it sent chills up my spine. When he came out of the bathroom, he was shocked to see me. I asked him who he was talking to and he acted dumb. He said he was just ordering a pizza. He was actually supposed to be sleeping because he worked the night shift. I knew something was wrong. I decided to follow him that night to work, and guess what? He didn't go to work. He went to another woman's house. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my boyfriend has a secret child with another woman. I followed him that night to what I thought was his job, but instead he drove 10 minutes away from our apartment to another woman's house. I parked a few cars away so I could see what he was doing. That's when a little boy and a woman come running out of the house. The woman kisses him on the mouth and he carries the little boy and hugs him. Believe it or not, I instantly got sick. I got out through the passenger door and vomited. I was horrified. My first thought was that he was married and I was the other woman. They walked into the house and I stayed waiting for him the entire night. He left that house at 6 in the morning the next day. But before he could get into his car, I confronted him. He was obviously shocked to see me there. He confessed that was his son, that he wasn't married to the woman. They were only together. So I was right. I was the other woman. He explained that he wasn't in love with the other woman and that he didn't have the heart to tell her he was in love with someone else. He got on his knees and apologized. Part 3 is up.
I f***ed my personal trainer while my husband was home. Oh my god. Welcome to The Confessional, a series where you guys send me your story times through here and I tell them here on TikTok so that you guys can get some genuine advice. From the day I met my husband, he would fat shame me. What is he, an Adonis? Made out of muscles? He's always complained about how I have a soft body and wants me to have abs like all those Insta models. I'm not the type to keep my mouth shut, so I told him to get me a personal trainer. We've been married 6 years now, and I've never bothered to go to the gym, not even one day. He likes going to the gym religiously and is in really good shape. So what? That doesn't mean that he gets to fat shame you, ever. I was actually joking about the personal trainer, but he actually agreed to it. He told me that he could only get me a male trainer, but he thought it was okay because he was a very good trainer. Never did I expect that this guy would turn my life around in the best way possible. Yes! By the way, I'm not even looking into a mirror right now. I'm reading off my cell phone. The trainer came over the next day and I was embarrassed to see how hot and attractive he was. We sat down and spoke for about 20 minutes and he asked me all about my goals. I know I must sound stupid. No, you don't. But getting the attention from such a hot guy made me feel seen again. Babe, that's because your husband doesn't make you feel seen. Now, here's the thing. I felt like he was attracted to me too. He kept staring into my eyes and would smile all the time. I was trying not to misinterpret things since he is so attractive and he probably smiles at all his clients, which he probably does. But then he started putting his hands around my waist, my shoulders, and my arms. I know the difference between a man's touch and a trainer's touch. Oh my god. This was a man's touch. We were working out in the backyard and that's when my husband came over and said he was leaving to run some errands. We finished the workout session and I was super sweaty. It was amazing. This man proceeded to stay with me for the next hour and a half talking about my goals once again. Wait, that's so sweet. 2 days later, he came over for our second session and that's when shit went down. In preparation for our second session, I drove myself to Lululemon and bought the tightest leggings I could find. I would do the same. I even bought the matching sports bra and wore a two-piece set for the first time ever. Girl, you go. Luckily, my husband had already left to the gym, so we were all by ourselves. As soon as my trainer came in through the door, he complimented me and told me that I looked amazing. A few minutes into the workout, I couldn't help myself any longer and I asked him if he was attracted to me. Damn! He answered yes right away, and we both started blushing and laughing at the same time. Now that I managed to break the ice, I would leave him to make the next move. And he did. He stood behind me while I was doing some squats, and I felt it. God. Girl, I want to live vicariously through you so bad. I turned around and we started making out passionately. As we were kissing, his hands started moving elsewhere, north and south. My knees were trembling. Yeah. My husband is not the most affectionate guy, so I was in much need of some loving. When we stopped kissing, we started laughing again at what we had just done. 2 minutes later, I hear my husband coming home. We quickly separated, but the next day it went further. This time my husband stayed home and we couldn't keep our hands off each other. My husband tends to lock himself in his office when he's looking at corn. And as soon as my trainer came over, he locked himself in his office, which means you know what. I knew it was our chance, so I grabbed his hand and took him to the back house. He pulled my pants down and he went at it. Then I pulled down his pants and I went at it. And then we did the dirty. As soon as we finished, we went outside and pretended like we were just done working out, which you could believe because we were both sweaty AF. It's been 2 months since I've been working out with my trainer and it's going amazing. I've managed to lose 10 pounds. I look amazing and I feel even better because every time he comes over, we end up doing it. My husband, on the other hand, has no clue and I don't care. He still continues to fat shame me, by the way, and he continues to show me pictures of girls on Instagram who he wishes I would look like. I'm pretty sure he's having an affair with his assistant. At this point, I don't care. I'm hiring a divorce lawyer and I'm getting half of everything. As you should. Should I feel guilty? I don't think he should find out that you're cheating because then you can't get half of everything. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Tell your husband about the trainer after you get a divorce. I mean, I'm sure he's gonna find out anyway. Go live your best life, get in shape, do the dirty, do whatever you want to do with this man, but be careful with your husband. Love you guys. Bye.
Best friend told my parents that I lost my V card because she was jealous. 2 months ago, I started dating a new guy at our high school. He was the new guy in school and every girl wanted to be with him, including my best friend. Now, before this, my best friend and I had never had any problems between us. She never showed herself to be envious or jealous of me, so I trusted her. And I literally told this girl everything. The new guy started showing me a lot of attention. He followed me on Instagram and DM'd me right away. Apparently, I reminded him of his ex, who he was obsessed with. One morning, my best friend and I are hanging out before class starts. The new guy walks up to us, says good morning to us both, and then asks me if he could talk to me privately. That's when my best friend says, "You can talk in front of me. I'm her best friend and she trusts me." So then he proceeded to ask me out in front of her. The look on her face was terrifying. She was so pissed off. Of course I said yes and he walked away. That's when my best friend said, "Oh my god, he's kind of ugly. Did you smell his breath? It stinks really bad. Why would you ever go out with that guy?" Then she says, "You better not go out with him." Her too. When she said, "You better not go out with him or I'll tell your parents." I looked at her and said, "You wouldn't dare." She's like, "You're right, I wouldn't." By the way, my parents were very strict. They'd never let me go out on dates, much less have a boyfriend. The weekend comes around and I'm getting prepared for my date. So I told my parents that I was going to be with my best friend the entire weekend. And of course, they believe me. I sent her a text message saying, "Hey, I told my parents I'm going to be with you. So if they ask you, you got to cover for me." She says, "Of course I will." I go on the date with the new guy and it was so much fun. For the first time ever, I was treated like a girl. He held my hand, he was kissing my neck, and he paid for everything. Like I said, up until that point, I'd never really had an experience like that. I was falling for him quick. We'd gone to watch a movie and at the movie theater, he started kissing me. Of course, I kissed him back. That's when he asked me if I wanted to go back to his house because his parents weren't home. And I said yes. As we're driving to his house, I was so excited. So I texted her out of excitement telling her that I was going to be going back to his house. She replied and told me that I was a slut and that I was being too easy. She even asked me to send her a picture of what I was wearing, which I did. Then she replied, "You'd look like a slut." Then we got to his house and we started making out again. Part 3 is up. That's when we started doing the dirty in his room. All while my best friend is slut shaming me. Could hear her messages come in as we're on his bed. I grab my phone and silence it and see that I have about 20 text messages from her. I read the first one and it said, "You better not be effing him right now, or I will tell your parents." But of course I ignored them. I was doing it with this guy. But to be honest, it ended pretty quickly. As I'm getting dressed, he says, "Do you need me to drop you off at your best friend's, or can you stay and have dinner with me?" This boy was trying to cook me dinner. Of course I said yes. I text my best friend and tell her, "Why are you being so mean?" I told her that nothing happened, but she wouldn't believe me. That's when I told her that he was going to make me dinner at his house, and this is when she got even angrier. She said, "Why is he making you dinner? What did you do to have to get that dinner?" I told her nothing and she wouldn't leave me alone. That's when she started calling my phone. Of course I didn't answer. 3 minutes later, I get a call from my mom. I answered right away and pretended to be at my best friend's. And that's when my mom told me that my best friend called her and told her the truth. So I couldn't lie anymore. Took me to my parents' house and they were furious. My parents told this boy that he has to marry me. He literally ran away. I ran out of time. Part 4 will be up soon.